Hey guys, this is Brad with Lucky 7 Racing and the Cars, Coffee, and Donut Automotive event that happens in San Diego, California. I'm doing another vehicle review today. This time I'm in a 2020 BMW X5 and I'm in the xdrive40 model. Now the reason why I'm in a 2020 and not a 2022 is because lately, with what's been going on with the automotive industry, finding a brand new car has been really difficult. In fact, I know a guy here locally in San Diego that works for BMW who tells me that in most cases, when you go to pick up a new vehicle from the dealer, they're telling you it's anywhere from 6 to 9 months before they can actually fulfill the order. So depending on the platform, you may not be able to immediately find a brand new one. So it's a little bit easier to take a look at one that's a couple years older. Might actually be a little bit more relatable for someone that's potentially looking for a mid-level luxury SUV. Now, this ranks right up there with the Cadillac XT5, the Audi Q5, and the AMG version that Mercedes has of their mid-size SUV. So it's comparable between those vehicles. Now this one specifically is powered by a 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine, makes about 335 horsepower, and it's got a pretty good amount of pickup to it. I've been driving it around for the past few days, and the 0 to 60 on this thing is somewhere around 3.8 seconds, which is actually pretty quick if you think about that from a performance standpoint for a mid-size luxury SUV and the weight that this vehicle has. I mean, 3.8 seconds 0 to 60, just a few years ago, you're talking about certain level Porsches, Mustangs, Corvettes, Camaros over the last few years. They've all been around that 0 to 60 time. Now obviously they've all gotten quicker, but for a heavy SUV to be that fast from 0 to 60 is one hell of a feat. So on top of the engine that it's got, the vehicle's got a number of different features for driving and being able to make it so that your own driving experience can be personalized to you. So it's got 5 different driving modes. There's the Eco mode, which is basically used for just cruising down the road, maybe going on a long distance freeway trip. And it actually reduces your throttle response. The steering's a little on the soft side and the suspension is pretty mellow. It goes into a comfort mode if you wanted to select that, which gives you a little bit more feedback to the driver, but it still takes away from the snappiness of the throttle response that you get compared to the 3 different sport modes that's on this car, which seems a little much. I mean, this is just a regular SUV. This isn't the M version necessarily, which BMW does have an X5 M version, which has a lot more horsepower, a lot more suspension and tire to it. But for this model, with the sport modes and the 3 different options that you have, there's the basic sport mode, which is built into the vehicle, where you just kind of set it and forget it. Then you've got sport individual, where you can go in and set the parameters on your own and make it to where your own driving experience with the car is more unique to yourself. And then there's Sport Plus. And if you can imagine that Sport Plus is pretty much everything to the highest level, where you have instant throttle response, your shift points are raised up, the suspension stiffens up a little bit, and of course your steering responds back to you. The steering's a little bit more firmer for tighter cornering and a little bit better handling. So it's pretty unique to have an SUV have those kind of features to it that you wouldn't necessarily use in other SUVs. I mean, if you think about it, you're not necessarily going to a track day with an SUV. Typically you're going to the store, you're running to work, you're taking the kids to school somewhere, off to Little League practice, something like that. So to have those kind of drive modes available to the driver seems a little odd for this level of SUV. Now on top of the different drive modes, you also have a couple of different shifting variables that you can adjust. Now it does have an 8-speed automatic to it, so if you just want to cruise down the road like we are right now and just kind of set it and forget it, you can leave it alone and get pretty decent gas mileage with that. In fact, I do believe it's around 24 miles on average with about a 20 highway, and I think it's a 20 in the city and 26 in the highway for mileage. That's not very bad for an SUV of this size. But if you don't want to be in just regular automatic drive mode, you can stick it manual mode. And you can either shift it with the paddle shifters here that are behind the steering wheel, or you can actually use the stick down here and you can shift up or down and go through the gears as you tool along and do whatever you want to do with it. So if you want to go out and have a spirited drive, you can actually do that with this car. Now it does have some pretty decent handling to it. It does also warn me a little bit if I push it too hard into a corner and it starts to understeer. It's got some okay mechanical grip. I mean, it's got a 19-inch wheel and tire package on it. It's not necessarily a really common size, and the tires on it are kind of an all-weather tire from BMW. They're not exactly a real grippy tire, but it will give you some decent grip and a little bit of performance as you're cruising along. If you want to go take a spirited drive around somewhere, you can probably do it, and you can do it with all your buddies in the car. So it makes for a pretty nice drive experience. In fact, BMW over the years specifically has really listened to the consumer when it comes to what's it like to really drive a car. And that's why they've put a lot of different features into this vehicle along with a lot of their others. Because initially, to really get something where you have a lot of different adjustable driving parameters, you were buying an M package. And you were probably also getting, say, an M3, an M4, maybe an M5 or bigger. You're not necessarily getting their standard car. Well, BMW has started to actually integrate a lot of what they have with the M packages and put it into a little bit of a lower price platform with some of their standard SUVs and standard sedans and coupes. And then that gives that consumer the opportunity to have their own unique driving experience with some of those features that are in the M models, but without the price. So it's kind of nice to see that BMW is willing to do that and make it so that the average person that may not necessarily be going out to buy an M model to also have some of those features at the same time. Now within the dash here, you can see that everything has got leather in it. This is considered a luxury SUV, so it's a little bit nicer as far as what you get in the interior. It's pretty comfortable. The seat that I'm in has some good side bolstering, although it is a little tight for me. I'm 6 foot and about 200 pounds, so the side bolstering has good support for going around corners a little spiritedly, but at the same time, it's a little tight on even my frame. So someone that's a little bit smaller in stature would probably sit a little bit more comfortably. And there's really no way to adjust it. I mean, you can't adjust the height and you can't adjust the seat back of the seat itself through the controls on the side for both the passenger and the driver. But you don't have this other adjustment in here that some other luxury SUVs may actually have. So it might be something to consider as you're looking at one of these. You're looking at something that's possibly a little bit larger of an SUV with some sports styling to it. Now on top of the interior, what you can't see is what's in front of me, and that's the dashboard. I do have a big display screen right here in front of me, and of course has everything on it from essentially your audio controls, your media, which has AM, FM radio. It's got Spotify capabilities. You can even Bluetooth right to it off your phone if you wanted to. On top of that, you've got your standard communications. If you want to Bluetooth off of your phone and talk to someone while you're driving, it's got those capabilities. Of course, it has a full navigational unit built into it, where you can do with most other luxury cars these days, or almost in some cases a standard car, where you've got a nice big screen that tells you where you're going. And of course, you have all the different parameters for driving the vehicle for adjusting to make things more personable to the way you want to drive. On top of that, BMW has even included a way to be able to download apps right into the car. So if you want something unique, you want Apple CarPlay, you want the Samsung CarPlay, I think is what it's called, you can put that right to the car as well, and that gives you your own unique experience. Now the dash that's right in front of me, and what you also can't see, is that you have your standard speedometer and tachometer on the vehicle, and right in the middle of that you actually have a small map that's moving to kind of show you where you are. And that's pretty nice to have that right in front of you, but the way that this is laid out, and if you start messing with the adjustments, like with your radio or whatever you're doing, you have to actually take your eyes off the road and look down and over here to see what you're doing. And that can be a little dangerous, especially in Southern California traffic, because no one ever looks at where they're going or what they're doing. So you can easily take your eyes off the road and get yourself into trouble if you're not careful. So it's something to kind of be mindful of when you're driving this sort of a vehicle, especially with all the cool little features and buttons and dials that's got on it, because there really is quite a bit here. The one thing that I'm really amazed at that BMW has done, even with all this technology and the fact that this is even a push button screen, is that the radio still has a simple volume control right down here, where it's like a little small knob. I don't know what BMW was thinking, what the designers were thinking of, let's put all this technology in here, but let's go back to the old school way of doing things and still include a small volume control knob down here that's just within an easy reach. I don't know if it's because they didn't have a way to really put it somewhere else on the vehicle to where it looks cool, or where it works with the technology within the vehicle and the updates that the vehicle has to it. And the steering wheel, like I said, also, as I said, has the shifting paddles behind here. You've also got full control in front of you that's pretty easy to grab with your thumbs. You've got all your cruise control settings. You do have settings for your radio, and if you're trying to use the phone, and you can hang up or disconnect. And there might be a little bit of a volume control in here as well, which is easy to reach within your while you're driving. So it makes it so you're not necessarily reaching down and reaching away from things. You have push button AC controls as well. They're all pretty simple to use. There's not very much to them. Within the center console here, you've got one big storage unit area that's right down here. It actually has your 2 cup holders. There's a remote cell phone charger in here as well, which is nice because you don't have to hook up a bunch of wires and plug a bunch of things in and try to charge stuff all at once. You can just slide your phone in, and it's completely wireless and allows you to charge pretty much any kind of smartphone pretty easily. On top of that, within the center console, of course, you have your shifting mechanism right here, which is within easy reach. You've got an adjustable dial right here that allows you to adjust the advanced controls on the dash, so you can actually kind of twirl back and forth between all the different settings and parameters. You can mess with essentially what radio station you want it to be on, how you want to control the navigation, any kind of other parameters you want to have on the screen right here can be adjusted through this dial. Now, of course, you can also adjust the different drive modes, which are all right in here. As I mentioned before, you've got the 5 different driving modes with an eco mode, a comfort mode, and then the 3 sport modes. Those buttons are all a quick push button right here within your hand's reach. Pretty easy to get to. You also have another bit of storage right here, which you can just hit this, and the center of it opens up. And It's pretty deep. You can put a number of things in there. You can fit a few cell phones in there, any kind of paperwork you may need, that sort of thing. There's another plug in there for being able to charge more smartphone accessories. And then you also have a USB port right here in the front, in this front console as well, that you can hook up into. Now in the back, there's a lot of room for pretty good sized guys. I was actually out and about with my buddies the other night. We went to dinner, threw everybody in the back, and they were pretty comfortable back there. So there is some nice foot room back there for guys that are a little bit bigger, which is nice because you want to be able to be comfortable in the back. On top of all the controls that are in here, the back headrests actually have USB ports in them. So if you've got kids in the back and they've got their smart devices and they're messing around, they can keep them plugged in and not have the battery go dead on them while they're in the middle of going down the road on a long trip, which is really nice to keep them entertained, and then you don't have to worry about what they're doing. You can just worry about driving, and it makes it so that your own drive experience remains what it is, and you're not having to worry about, oh my God, what's happening in the back seat of the car. Now the very back area, of course, with the storages, there's a good amount of room back there for groceries. If you've got, gear bags because you're taking kids to Little League or to football practice, there's some room back there to be able to shove gear bags back there. My own personal gear bag for when I go racing is an Ogio 9800 oil rig setup. And that's a pretty large bag because that carries my helmet, my Hans devices, 2 or 3 race suits, extra clothes for the weekend. You imagine I can put it all in one bag, and that fits back there as well behind the seats. Now, of course, if you need some more room, the back seats can fold down and you can have a little bit of a larger load in the back. Now, you're not necessarily going to be going to Home Depot with the vehicle like this because you do have a nice leather interior and you don't want to tear it up. But if you wanted to and you had a larger load, you can stick it back there and you can pretty much fit anything you need to. I'm driving along here, I'm testing on a pretty windy, twisty 2-lane road, and I do that because I want to be able to feel what the mechanical grip is with the vehicle. I usually drive most vehicles in the sport mode because I just prefer that. I like the snappier crispness of the throttle. I like the response I get back from the steering and the suspension. And BMW over the years has really done a good job in advancing that from what they take from their motorsports and racing programs and applying that to their consumer vehicles that they have throughout the dealerships. Now, retail for one of these at the time with the 2020 was right around $60,000. Prices, of course, have fluctuated over the years, and with the current situation of the automotive market, you might be able to find one of these secondhand for probably a little bit less than that. But of course, it depends on the mileage on the vehicle. Now, this is a fleet vehicle that I'm driving, so what I've got for basically 700, 800 miles that are on it is not too bad of a vehicle. You might be able to find one for, say, around the mid-50s, because on the secondhand market, a lot of vehicles are going for almost what they were brand new, because there's just not a lot of new vehicles out there. So you may want to consider that price point when you're looking at this compared to some of the other vehicles that are on the market and see what you really prefer. Now, as I cruise through some of these twisty, windy roads, I've got really good feedback through the steering wheel and through the suspension. I can feel everything that's going on through the mechanical grip of the tires. And again, these are just a basic all-season tire that BMW puts on these. I don't have a lot of grip here. I don't have a real sticky tire designed to go around corners real fast, which is fine because I don't really need that. Because like I said, this kind of a vehicle, at least for my own personal taste, I'm probably not going to be doing this or using this to go to a track day with. Now, what's really unique, though, is that the Jeep Trackhawk, which is almost considered to be a mid-sized luxury SUV to a degree because of some of its advancements, would actually compete with this. But yet, BMW has the M version of this, so it's really hard to actually compete with those two vehicles because of what this has and what that has to it. So it's interesting to see how everything compares in the market between all the different vehicles that are out there. So on top of all the interior that you see around me, and one more thing I really want to mention is that this vehicle does only not have a sunroof with it, it also has what's called a moonroof. And what's unique is that you can hit this button right here and the roof slides all the way back to the top, or all the way back to the back from the top. Now what's nice about that is you get this great panoramic view for everybody sitting in the vehicle. The downside to it is that during the day, when you're a bald-headed guy like me, you get the sun beating down on you because there's not a lot of window tint on this window up here. And then, of course, on top of the moonroof design, you've got the sunroof here that can open up as well. I'm not going to open it up because it creates a lot of wind noise. You may not be able to hear me while I'm talking through the video because of that. So I'm going to keep that shut. But in the meantime, this is a really good view for, your guys in the back when you're cruising along. The kids that might be in the back, they would enjoy looking up and seeing stuff. It's a really great view for at night. So it's kind of a unique feature with this vehicle that's specific to the vehicle, because I don't know of too many other mid-sized luxury SUVs that actually offer this. I'm going to close that back up so you guys can see how it operates. I kind of think that's pretty cool myself. Now, with all these different features and functions and all these little bells and whistles on it, I mean, to me, it seems like it's just a little much as far as what you've got and all the adjustable controls that are within reach. it seems like you can maybe go with a little bit less on this level of a vehicle and be just as happy with its performance and its drivability. But for you guys out there, you might think a little bit different. Some of you out there might prefer more of the M model, which I wish that I could get a hold of an M model and test that out. So if anybody from BMW is watching this, and if you guys have one that you'd let me test, I'd love to drive it and do a review on it for you guys to see how that compares to this, because that is definitely more of the sportier model, and it's got a lot more advanced features in it for doing things like track days and you know, performance-oriented type driving. Whereas with this, you know, we're just cruising along through the back roads here of San Diego, kind of in an area where I like to test. So hopefully you guys get a chance to be able to drive one of these things and consider this as actually one of the vehicles within this platform, because as a mid-sized luxury SUV, this is actually a pretty nice drive. I've been enjoying it for the past 2 or 3 days. It cruises down the freeway really nicely. It's got really good pickup with the engine. I actually have experienced that 3.8 second 0 to 60 time, as I mentioned earlier. So it's got some good power for being 335 horsepower. Now, of course, this being a turbo car, for those of you out there that are wondering, there might be some tuning ability with that, because you can always go into the computer and make some changes and mess with it and give yourself a little bit more power if that's available to you, or if it's something that you may consider. So it might not be a bad idea to maybe take a look at one of these versus the M model, because you get some of those sport features, but you don't get that M model price. So for someone like me, it might be a little bit more worth it, but honestly, I would probably prefer the M model just because of who I am and how I like to drive and the type of event that I like to go to and where I'd like to take it. I mean, essentially, you could take this out to a Cars and Coffee with all your buddies and have a good time, instead of only being able to take one person to Cars and Coffee because you only got the one seat next to you in a coupe or maybe a really small sedan. For now, this is Brad from Lucky 7 Racing and the Cars, Coffee, and Donut Automotive event from San Diego, California, and I hope to see you guys on the next video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to everything I got going on. Hopefully, I'll have more of these going on throughout the rest of the year. I'll be able to do a little bit of racing later on this year for you guys to watch as well. For now, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.